Kevin had been stood up on Christmas Eve for the third year in a row, and he was reaching for his coat when the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen sat down across from him and said, "You look lonely, so am I." Kevin's hand froze midair. He stared at her as if seeing a mirage. She had crimson scales along her neck and arms that glinted under the restaurant lights like flowing embers. Her long dark red hair fell in waves around delicate horns atop her head, framing a face of surprising grace and beauty. Golden eyes met his with an intensity he couldn't quite place. "Are you here for me?" Kevin managed to croak out as she fixed him with that unwavering gaze. "I am Thyra," she said simply, tilting her head inquisitively. "And I think we were meant to meet." Kevin blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the shock. Her presence was so unexpected and otherworldly that it felt surreal. He'd been sat here for 2 hours. Nohi's family had set him up yet again on a blind date with someone who clearly wasn't interested in sticking around, but this woman sitting across from him didn't seem like she fit into any of his usual dating woes. He took another look at her no visible wedding ring, but something about the way she held herself suggested maturity and experience. Her dress was red like Christmas, but it had a sophisticated elegance that made Kevin feel plain in comparison with his hand-knit sweater from home. "I'm Kevin," he said, extending his hand hesitantly. "I can see that," Thyra replied dryly, as she took his hand gently and shook it briefly before letting go. Kevin's cheeks flushed slightly at the quirk of her lips when she pulled back. "Did you say you were lost?" Her eyes softened for a moment. It was such an unexpected shift in expression, Kevin almost missed it entirely. Amid her usual direct demeanor, he caught just enough to know there was pain beneath that steely exterior. "Perhaps not anymore," Thyra said quietly, after a pause. Kevin frowned at the cryptic answer, but decided against pressing further as he felt his heart fluttering oddly under her intense gaze. "So, why are you here then? Just passing by?" Thyra's expression turned to mild amusement, which was even more disconcerting than her deadpan tone had been before. She leaned back in the chair and clasped her hands together thoughtfully. "Observation," she said finally, after a moment of reflection. "I came for it." Kevin raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further this time. Something told him he'd probably regret asking more about whatever cryptic reason brought her here tonight, especially considering how bizarre everything was going so far. "Well, if you're just looking to get out from underfoot somewhere," Kevin offered awkwardly, after a moment of silence between them. "I'm pretty sure my date isn't showing up, so feel free." Thyra regarded him with those curious golden eyes for another long minute before nodding slowly, accepting the silent invitation. "I am grateful," she said softly, as if surprised by her own feelings in that moment. Then, with a slightly warmer expression than Kevin had seen yet on her face, "And perhaps we could start over properly." "I'm Thyra." Kevin felt a small spark of hope ignite within him as he shook her hand again, this time more firmly. He'd been alone at Christmas for too many years now. Maybe tonight would be different. "I'm glad you're here," Kevin admitted softly, after setting his coat down and sitting back properly in the chair opposite her. "I'm sorry about your date." Thyra tilted her head again, golden eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him once more before seeming to shake off whatever thought had passed through them. "It is not my loss," Thyra said with a slight shrug that belied something deeper underneath the words themselves. She then leaned forward and asked gently, "What about you?" "Who was this?" Kevin sighed, running his fingers through his hair as he looked down at their interlinked hands for just a moment before letting them fall apart again awkwardly. "My family set me up," Kevin explained with an almost self-deprecating chuckle that came out sounding more hollow than intended. "They think I need someone But honestly, it's been years since anyone showed real interest in me." Thyra seemed to take his words seriously, nodding slowly, as if absorbing the weight of them rather than brushing off such a sentiment. "And you?" Kevin asked after another pause had settled between them again. Curiosity about her prompted him more now with each moment they spent together at this table alone amidst other couples and families celebrating Christmas Eve. "An ancient observer," she said quietly, avoiding his eyes as if the words hurt to speak aloud, even though he could see no regret in their delivery. Kevin sensed a vast sadness behind that facade of strength. Perhaps it was just being alone again, after so long without company, on what should have been a day full of warmth and connection. "An observer," Kevin repeated, his voice low, as if the word itself held some deeper significance he couldn't quite grasp yet. Thyra's gaze softened once more before she reached across the table to place one cool hand gently over his. Her touch was firm, but not overpowering. The brief contact that lingered perhaps longer than necessary between strangers and felt like a promise of warmth despite her unusual appearance. Kevin blinked at the unexpected gesture, feeling an unfamiliar stir of something akin to affection rise within him as he squeezed back briefly before she pulled away almost immediately afterward, leaving his hand tingling from where it had made brief contact with hers. It was odd and somewhat unsettling, but also oddly welcoming in a way that reminded Kevin why Christmas Eve meant so much to him. "Shall we order?" Thyra asked abruptly, after another moment of silence between them. Kevin looked up at her question, then nodded as he finally managed to muster the faintest hint of a smile. "That sounds nice." The waiter approached just then, with an expectant look on his face, no doubt wondering why Kevin had abandoned any attempt to leaving. Thyra smiled warmly at him despite their awkward situation. "Would you be kind enough?" she asked politely, gesturing towards the menu. The man nodded eagerly before turning back to them again and asking for their orders in a respectful tone that made Kevin feel less like he was being pitied now with this unusual woman by his side. After they had placed their order, Thyra selecting a surprisingly hearty meal while Kevin opted for something light out of habit, the waiter left once more, leaving the table silent save for the soft hum of conversations around them. Kevin looked back across at Thyra, who was observing him quietly, again now with those intriguing golden eyes that seemed to see into his soul despite how much he tried not to let anyone get too close or deep since losing hope. "Thank you," Kevin said softly, looking down at their half-empty glasses and feeling a bit embarrassed. "I haven't had company like this in, well." Thyra gave him an almost gentle smile that made her entire face light up, a rare occurrence indeed for someone who seemed so used to being alone after all these centuries. "You are welcome," she replied just as softly, reaching across the table once more, but this time merely laying a hand on his arm briefly before letting it fall again. It was brief and almost inconsequential in some ways, yet also full of an undercurrent Kevin wasn't sure he understood at that moment. The food arrived shortly thereafter amidst their continued silence, broken only by polite exchanges about taste preferences between them as they ate slowly but steadily without rushing each other to finish or leave the table. As the hours ticked on, Kevin found himself relaxing into Thyra's company despite her unusual presence and his initial shock. Her manner was different from any human he'd ever known before, direct yet kind when she needed it, curious about him in a way that made him feel seen for who he truly was rather than just as an accountant with no social life. Thyra, meanwhile, continued to observe him intently, at times while also engaging deeply whenever they spoke directly. She seemed fascinated by human emotions and traditions surrounding holidays, such as Christmas Eve. Curiously, so given her status as a Drakari dragon woman who likely knew much more about the universe than any one person could ever fully grasp. "Your family?" Thyra asked gently at one point during their meal, bringing them back to topics Kevin usually avoided out of habit due to the painful memories associated with past interactions over his failed relationships. Kevin sighed heavily and met her eyes again, even though it felt like a vulnerable act every time he did so now. "They mean well," he admitted finally, after another beat had passed between them under those piercing golden gazes that seemed to cut through all of his usual defenses almost effortlessly. "But they just don't get me." Thyra's expression softened even further, her eyes reflecting a rare hint of understanding and empathy rather than judgment or pity, something Kevin hadn't really expected from someone so seemingly detached before. "And you?" she asked softly, after another moment had passed between them in comfortable silence. "Do you understand yourself?" Kevin blinked at the question. It was an honest one that cut to his very core, but also felt almost too personal for a stranger who had just met hours ago over an unexpected dinner on Christmas Eve. He hesitated before nodding slowly, considering her words carefully, as if truly thinking about them for perhaps the first time since hearing similar sentiments echoed back at him by family and friends so often in recent years. "Maybe I'm starting to." Thyra's golden eyes glowed softly with what might have been approval or pride rather than mockery had Kevin ever expected it from her before. "And this?" she asked, again, gesturing towards the empty space between them, where a date was supposed to be, but wasn't now that they were here instead, together, at last amidst all these unfamiliar sights and sounds around them on Christmas Eve. "Is what you want." Kevin's heart stuttered in his chest as he met her gaze. Once more it was one of those rare moments when someone truly asked him about himself rather than trying to fix or change anything outside themselves first. I do," Kevin admitted finally, after another long pause between them now filled only by their shared presence at this table under the restaurant lights. "I want connection." Thyra's hand covered his briefly once more, her touch warm despite how cool it felt against his skin, and there was a sense of peace in that brief contact that made Kevin feel less alone than he had in years. "You have found one," she said softly, after pulling back this time perhaps even slower than before, leaving him feeling slightly bereft yet also oddly comforted by the memory of her touch lingering on his fingers now long gone but not forgotten so easily, under those golden eyes still studying him closely, across from where they sat together at last beneath their table's soft candlelight. Neil continued with a mix of conversation and moments of quiet reflection, each exchange bringing Kevin closer to understanding both himself and this enigmatic woman beside him. As the night wore on, he felt something shift within, perhaps hope or change, that had been absent for far too long in his life, until now when Thyra Flame Wing arrived unbidden into his world and stayed with him despite everything. And so as Christmas Eve drew to a close around them amidst festive cheer and warm holiday lights illuminating the streets beyond, Kevin found himself at last truly looking forward to what could come next rather than dreading another lonely season alone, without connection or meaning in his life, until tomorrow dawned once more. Chapter 2: The Strange Date. Kevin O'Brien sat alone at a corner table in an upscale restaurant on Christmas Eve, his plate half empty beside him as he stared into space. He had been expecting someone to join him for what felt like hours now, only to be left with nothing but the cold silence of unfulfilled expectation. His heart sank lower than ever before when it finally became clear that whoever was supposed to meet him here didn't intend on showing up. Just as he considered ordering another round, or simply packing up and going home alone for yet another holiday spent in solitude, a figure approached his table with an air about them unlike anyone Kevin had ever met. The creature standing before him looked almost human, except her neck glowed faintly red like firelight through glass panes, scales sliding down along both sides as if painted there by some unseen artist's brush stroke. "Ah," she said simply when she spotted him, tilting her head slightly in apparent curiosity. "You are the man I was told about." Her voice carried an odd melodic quality to it that made Kevin blink rapidly in surprise and confusion alike. "I'm sorry," he managed, feeling foolish for even trying to understand this sudden arrival who looked more like a myth than any real person could ever be expected to resemble. "Are you here by mistake?" Thyra Flame Wing shook her head with an almost gentle grace that seemed out of place given how imposing she appeared, standing there towering slightly over the shorter Kevin, crimson scales along her arms and neck shimmering softly as if lit from within. "No," she replied calmly, taking a seat opposite him without another word or invitation first. "I am here for you." Kevin could only stare in dumbfounded silence. Never before had someone just shown up like this, saying such strange things that made no sense whatsoever, unless he was losing his mind already, which wasn't exactly unheard of after all. "I apologize if my appearance," Thyra began, stopping abruptly as she seemed to notice how utterly speechless Kevin remained, staring back at her without even attempting any kind of reply. "Let me introduce myself properly," she continued finally with a small sigh that conveyed an almost humorous exasperation despite the softness in tone. "I am Thyra Flame Wing." "Kevin," he stammered out eventually, somehow managing to find his voice again, though barely coherent still. "I know who you are," she assured him, eyes glinting slightly with a warmth Kevin had never felt from anyone else before, despite all the attempts by friends and family over years. "I came because I saw your sadness, your longing." She paused thoughtfully, then shrugged elegantly, as if dismissing something far more significant than he could ever hope to comprehend, let alone articulate himself in response. And just like that, they fell into an uneasy conversation, at least until Kevin managed to order a fresh round of drinks and appetizers for both of them under Thyra's watchful gaze. He explained his situation, being stood up on what was meant to be another Christmas blind date, and how he found himself here alone, except now not quite so lonely anymore with this odd creature sitting across from him. "You have never had a successful first date?" she asked curiously, leaning forward slightly, as if trying to understand some hidden puzzle about human nature that eluded her despite centuries of observation and study. "Never, not really," Kevin admitted sheepishly, after another sip of wine. It was strange enough having this conversation with someone who wasn't just a total stranger, but also an alien visitor from another world, judging by how different she looked compared to any other person had ever encountered in his entire life. "And you are upset about it?" Thyra pressed further, tilting her head again, as if finding something intriguingly complex in the simple question despite the straightforward nature of it all. "Why?" Kevin chuckled softly despite himself at such an honest query coming from someone who seemed so unaccustomed to dealing with emotional nuance, let alone understanding feelings beyond basic survival instincts like fear or hunger. "Well, I mean," he began slowly, searching for words that would make sense out loud, even though they were a jumbled mess inside his head. I want connection, right? But everyone keeps telling me I'm too boring. Boring? They were repeated flatly, after another moment of silence stretching between them, until it felt almost oppressive despite her presence, somehow calming some part of Kevin he hadn't realized was constantly on edge before now. He nodded reluctantly because denying such a statement seemed impossible when faced with the blunt truth in those golden eyes looking back at him unflinchingly. Yeah, boring. And you believe this? She asked softly, but urgently, as if needing an honest answer more than anything else right now, no matter how painful it might be for either of them. Kevin's shoulders slumped further down despite himself, because he felt her question in his bones rather than merely hearing words spoken aloud into the air between them. Yeah, he admitted again finally, voice cracking just slightly under the weight of so many years carrying this belief about himself alone, until now when Thyra challenged it without meaning to. And why? She pressed gently once more after another long pause where neither spoke, but simply looked at each other through that sudden stillness hanging heavily around them like thick fog rolling in off some distant shore. Kevin's hands clenched reflexively on his napkin as he tried to find the words, feeling vulnerable despite himself under such direct attention from someone so strange yet oddly compelling too, because she asked without mocking him or pitying him, instead seeking real understanding beneath all those scales and horns that made her seem otherworldly, but also human in ways Kevin hadn't realized until now. I don't know how to change it, he admitted softly, after another moment, looking down at the tablecloth rather than meeting Thyra's gaze again, even though she waited patiently for an answer. Everyone expects me to be someone I'm not. And what are you? She asked quietly yet firmly, as if probing deeper still into his soul, without meaning to hurt but also with no patience left for false pretenses or polite niceties masking real truth beneath. Kevin's heart stuttered in response, feeling exposed and raw despite himself under such honest inquiry from someone who seemed more interested than dismissive of whatever answers he might provide, even though they looked like something out of a fairy tale, standing there looking at him with those golden eyes glowing softly now, as if reflecting some inner light no one had seen before. Maybe I'm starting to understand, he said finally, after another long moment where silence stretched between them until it almost seemed alive with tension and potential, waiting only for someone brave enough to break free from the past into something new here tonight. Despite everything, I've always felt like there should be more, but didn't know what that meant. Thyra's expression softened then, eyes reflecting a rare hint of understanding rather than judgment or mockery, which Kevin hadn't expected given how seemingly detached she appeared earlier compared to now in this moment where something shifted between them under those piercing golden eyes studying him closely. And this? She asked again softly, after another silent interlude stretching between them until it felt almost sacred somehow, with its own weight and power unspoken, but present like an invisible thread binding both of them together. Is what you want? Kevin's heart skipped in his chest at such a direct query, meeting her gaze once more despite the fear gnawing inside him at opening himself up to someone so unfamiliar yet compelling too, because Thyra asked without mocking or pitying, instead seeking real connection beneath all that scale and firelight. I do, he admitted finally, after another long pause where silence hung between them heavier than ever before tonight. I want connection. Thyra's hand covered his briefly then, her touch warm despite how cool it felt against his skin, and there was a sense of peace in that brief contact that made Kevin feel less alone for the first time since forever. You have found one, she said softly, after pulling back this time perhaps even slower than before, leaving him feeling bereft yet comforted by the memory lingering on his fingers, now long gone, but not forgotten so easily, under those golden eyes still studying him closely, across from where they sat together at last beneath soft candlelight illuminating their table. The meal continued then, with a mix of conversation and moments of quiet reflection, each exchange bringing Kevin closer to understanding both himself and this enigmatic woman beside him. As the night wore on, he felt something shift within, perhaps hope or change, that had been absent for far too long in his life, until now when Thyra Flame Wing arrived unbidden into his world and stayed with him despite everything. And so as Christmas Eve drew to a close around them, amidst festive cheer and warm holiday lights illuminating the streets beyond, Kevin found himself at last truly looking forward, rather than dreading another lonely season alone, without connection or meaning in his life, until tomorrow dawned once more. Kevin left the restaurant, his mind still reeling from what had transpired at the table. He walked through the snowy streets of New York City, trying to process everything that Thyra Flame Wing had shared about her origins and losses. Her words echoed in his head like a foreign language he hadn't known existed until now. Thyra was walking beside him, her crimson-scaled neck glinting softly under the light from street lamps as they walked. Kevin's eyes kept drifting to her, unable to shake off the surreal sensation of having met someone so otherworldly yet oddly relatable in their shared loneliness. Maybe I should explain, Thyra sighed suddenly, breaking into his thoughts with a weariness that seemed like it came from centuries past rather than just this moment. I am an ancient dragon woman, Drakari species. My mate died long ago. Centuries have passed since he left me, and I've been alone ever since. Kevin felt the weight of her words, heavy and laden with untold sorrow. He stopped walking for a second, looking back at Thyra as she continued speaking. But something about you. She paused, searching his face intently before continuing in a softer tone. I saw your eyes, hopelessness mixed within it. Alan, I felt compelled to sit down here tonight. Kevin's heart tightened with the realization that someone else might truly see him. He looked back at her, the snowflakes around them like tiny dancers of winter. Then let me show you, he said finally, taking a step closer and reaching out his hand for hers despite knowing it wasn't human hands she needed to hold it. There was an unspoken understanding between them, as if their hearts were already beating in sync. He hesitated only briefly before clasping the clawed hand gently. Thyra's eyes flickered with surprise, her scales catching the glow of street lights around them like a flame dancing on cold winter night air. You are willing? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with an ancient longing that made Kevin's chest ache. Kevin nodded firmly in response. Yes, he replied confidently despite his doubts and fears lingering just beneath the surface of their shared connection under moonlit skies. He felt compelled to prove himself worthy of such trust from this enigmatic dragon woman who held untold wisdom yet thirsted for something as simply profound as human love. They continued walking, the cold air biting at Kevin's cheeks, but his spirit feeling warmer than it ever had in years. His hand remained intertwined with Thyra's despite its strange feel against his own fingers. Her scales were cool and unfamiliarly tough compared to human flesh, yet there was warmth within that touch nonetheless, like holding on to a flicker of flame amidst icy winds. Tell me more about why you came here, Kevin asked gently, looking up at her as they walked along the snowy sidewalks. Why Christmas? Thyra's golden eyes softened slightly as she gazed down at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Perhaps it was a mix of wonder and longing hidden behind centuries old scales. "I heard humans still believe in love," Thyra explained after another moment's pause, her voice low yet carrying the weight of ages past. "I wanted to remember what that felt like again." Kevin's heart contracted at those words, imagining how many lifetimes she might have lived alone without the warmth he so desperately craved and took for granted before. "Do you think there's still hope?" Kevin asked softly after another moment's pause as they walked on, each step bringing him closer to something new despite all odds stacked against such a possibility. Until now this evening, when Thyra Wing chose to sit beside him in an empty restaurant booth rather than walk away into the night alone. Thyra's eyes flickered with uncertainty before settling back onto Kevin's face once more. I hope so," she admitted quietly, sounding almost as unsure of herself and her place here on Earth among humans as he was accustomed to feeling about his own life back home in New York City. Kevin squeezed Thyra's hand gently, then, drawing strength from their unusual connection despite the strangeness lingering between them both. "We'll find out together," he said firmly, resolving inside himself that perhaps this could be a chance for something different after years spent living within familiar routines and disappointments repeated over time with no end in sight. They walked on amidst falling snowflakes, dancing around them like silent angels watching from above as night grew darker still. Kevin felt his usual doubts slowly melting away under Thyra's unwavering gaze, the weight of centuries giving way to something fresh yet fragile, a tentative promise of warmth emerging beneath layers frozen hard by time and regret. "Where are we going?" Thyra asked suddenly, after a few more blocks passed in peaceful silence, where they seemed content simply walking side by side through city streets transformed by Christmas magic into something dreamlike out of fairy tales come true despite the chill biting at their toes and fingertips alike. Kevin smiled wistfully as he glanced up at her, then, feeling that strange sense of possibility rising within him once more against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like Kevin O'Brien until now. "To somewhere we can talk," Kevin replied softly yet with resolve building in his chest despite everything uncertain about their journey ahead together. "Somewhere warm." Thyra nodded silently in agreement then, her golden eyes reflecting the soft glow of street lamps around them, as if catching and holding on to every flicker of hope amidst winter's darkness. Kevin guided her towards a small cafe tucked away on a quiet side street, not far from where they'd been standing earlier. The cozy little place was barely lit by interior lamps glowing through windows adorned with snowflakes, holly leaves, and twinkling fairy lights, almost as if it had been deliberately placed here to offer solace against the cold night outside. They pushed open the door together, stepping inside into a world where Christmas warmth clung thickly in air scented heavily of spiced cider and freshly baked cookies. Kevin felt his heart warm at the sight, while Thyra's eyes widened slightly with surprise as she looked around, perhaps surprised by how different humans' celebrations could be compared to what she might have imagined based on second-hand stories heard during her observations. Kevin led them towards a corner booth near back windows offering views of snow-covered trees and lights beyond, pulling out one side for Thyra before sliding into the other. The warmth within hit him almost like a physical force after hours spent walking through chilly night air with nothing but winter wind around them, yet now he felt something else stirring deeply inside as well amidst all this cozy comfort. "Would you mind if I got us some hot drinks?" Kevin asked softly, glancing up at Thyra, who nodded silently before looking back down to examine their surroundings more closely while he went off in search of mugs and steaming beverages. He paused only briefly outside the counter where they could serve him, hesitating for a moment as warmth spread through his chest with every step closer towards this strange yet hopeful possibility unfolding alongside Thyra Flame. Wing. Back at their booth, Kevin returned holding 2 large cups filled with steaming spice cider and mugs of hot chocolate. He set them down carefully before sliding back into place opposite from where Thyra sat still studying her new surroundings closely, as if seeing things through a lens she'd never had chance to use before now when meeting someone like him despite all odds. He offered 1 cup towards her, watching curiously how she accepted it gingerly yet without hesitation. The steam rose off the surface of liquid inside, golden glow reflecting onto Thyra's face in soft light from nearby candles burning low behind them, as if illuminating something new under moonlit skies outside through windows still streaked with snow. "Thank you," Thyra said quietly, after taking a sip, looking back up at Kevin with eyes that had softened further beneath her golden irises. "It is very nice." Kevin nodded in agreement, then took his own drink in hand, feeling warmth spread throughout him despite the cool air lingering around them inside this cozy cafe, sensation of connection growing stronger between themselves as each minute passed by together now after all else that happened on Christmas Eve until today. "So why did you give up hope?" Kevin asked gently once they both settled into more comfortable silence with drinks warming hands and spirits alike amidst candlelight dancing softly nearby. "What made you lose faith in love?" Thyra's expression turned slightly pensive as she gazed down at her cup thoughtfully before looking back up towards him again after a moment or two had passed quietly between them. "My mate, Aradan," she began softly yet with unmistakable pain still lingering within words long since spoken, but never truly healed over centuries past. "He died saving me from something terrible. I was alone ever since." Kevin's heart clenched painfully at her admission of loss, so profound it had left scars across ages and species alike. "Then why come back here now?" Kevin asked again, his voice barely above a whisper despite the weight of questions echoing between them still unresolved amidst winter's chill outside, yet warmth growing steadily stronger within this little cafe under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together now sharing stories hidden by time past until today when Thyra Flame Wing chose to sit down beside him instead, walking away alone into night shadows. Thyra's eyes flickered with a strange mixture of uncertainty and determination as she looked back at Kevin. "Then I think maybe there's still hope here," she said quietly, after another moment passed between them silently. "Hope that something new might yet be possible despite everything lost along way." Kevin nodded slowly in understanding, feeling the weight of centuries lifting gradually from Thyra's shoulders as she spoke openly about pain and possibility, alike with someone like him now sitting across table amidst Christmas cheer. "So you came to Earth because humans still believe?" Kevin asked quietly, after another moment passed between them, yet growing closer every second under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together, finding connection despite all odds stacked against such a thing ever happening until tonight when Thyra Flame Wing arrived unbidden into his world and stayed with him instead, walking away amidst winter's chill. Thyra nodded softly then, looking back up towards Kevin after another moment had passed between them silently yet growing warmer every second under candlelight dancing nearby. "Yes," she replied quietly but firmly, like resolving something deeply within herself despite all doubts lingering still unresolved amidst stories hidden by time past. until today, when they sat together finding hope, emerging beneath layers, frozen hard by sorrow. Kevin nodded slowly, in understanding then, feeling that strange sense of possibility rising within him against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like Kevin O'Brien, yet now perhaps beginning to shift under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet warmth growing stronger every second inside this cozy little cafe. "So what happens next?" Thyra asked quietly, after another moment passed between them silently, despite everything unresolved, still lingering beneath layers, frozen hard by sorrow, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other finding connection, rather than walking away alone amidst winter's darkness and loneliness that had defined lives past before now, under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together amidst Christmas cheer. Kevin looked back at Thyra, then, feeling something shift within him as well against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like Kevin O'Brien, yet now perhaps beginning to change under moonlit skies through windows behind them amid snowflakes dancing around outside, but warmth growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. "I don't know," he admitted softly, after another moment passed between them silently, despite everything unresolved still lingering beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other finding connection rather than walking away alone. "But I want us both to figure it out." Thyra's golden eyes softened further then, as she looked back up towards Kevin with something like understanding and hope hidden behind centuries old scales, yet emerging beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other amidst Christmas cheer finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both now under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together. "Then let's do that," she replied quietly but firmly, despite everything unresolved still lingering underneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, yet emerging beneath warmth growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. "Let us figure it out." Kevin nodded in agreement then, feeling something shift within him as well against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like Kevin O'Brien, yet now perhaps beginning to change under moonlit skies through windows behind them amidst snowflakes dancing around outside, but Christmas cheer were growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. They sat there quietly together then, candlelight flickering softly nearby while warmth spread steadily throughout them both, despite everything unresolved still lingering underneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both now under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. And as night wore on around them beneath festive lights illuminating city streets beyond snowy sidewalks, transforming world into something dreamlike out of fairy tales come true, despite everything uncertain about their journey ahead now under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing steadily stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. Kevin found himself looking forward rather than dreading another lonely season alone, without connection or meaning in life, until tomorrow dawned once more with something new beginning to emerge beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow. that had defined lives past before now. The chapter ends here, as Kevin and Thyra sit quietly together amidst Christmas cheer inside the cozy cafe. The warmth of the candlelight and their shared hope for a future unknown yet promising fills them both, despite all uncertainties lingering still unresolved amidst stories hidden by time past until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both now, under moonlit skies through windows behind where they sat together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. The Christmas market was bustling, filled with the cheerful sounds of carolers and the scent of pine and cinnamon. Kevin had left his cozy cafe earlier than he intended after a sense of duty pulled him toward the lively streets outside. He wandered through stalls adorned with twinkling lights and colorful decorations, feeling more at ease amidst the festive chaos. Thyra lingered nearby, observing humans engaged in their holiday traditions from behind an art stall draped with intricate glass ornaments. Her presence was ethereal yet commanding, her crimson scales glinting subtly under flickering street lamps as she leaned against a booth filled with handcrafted trinkets and jewelry that mirrored the beauty of Earth's seasonal celebrations. However, this peaceful moment did not last long. The air grew suddenly cold as shadows slithered out from between alleys and corners, their arrival signaled by an unsettling whispering wind. Kevin paused mid-step at the sudden chill before his eyes caught sight of a sinister figure emerging amidst these shadows, black-robed figures with hollow faces devoid of expression. "We have been searching for you," one of them said in a voice that seemed to echo through time itself, its tone sharp and authoritative against the festive backdrop. Thyra Flame, Wing. The dragonwoman stiffened at this declaration, but did not turn around immediately. She straightened her red dress, maintaining an air of regal composure, despite the ominous presence now looming over the Christmas market. "Who are you?" Thyra asked without turning fully toward them. Her voice held a trace of curiosity rather than fear or anger. "We are known simply as the Hollow Court," another member replied with disdain evident in their tone. "You know why we're here." Thyra's heart clenched momentarily, an ancient sorrow resurfacing through the surface layer of resolve she had maintained thus far on Earth. But before her emotions could fully take hold and consume her attention, Kevin stepped into view beside her. "Mind your manners," he said firmly, though his voice carried a hint of nervousness masked by determination. "Who are you to threaten her?" A snarl twisted the lips of one Hollow Court member as they glanced at Kevin with contemptuous amusement. "He is mortal," it sneered mockingly at Thyra. "He cannot protect you." Kevin's eyes widened slightly, but he squared his shoulders, meeting their gaze without flinching. "Try me." Thyra observed this exchange from the corner of her eyes. Human was proving more resilient than she might have initially thought possible given his quiet demeanor and reserved nature in public interactions back at the cafe. "You will not interfere," another Hollow Court member warned Kevin darkly, stepping closer menacingly with a visible aura of malice surrounding them. "Your kind is beneath us." Thyra's heart began to throb under her scales as she witnessed Kevin standing firm despite this intimidating display from beings far beyond his mortal understanding or capabilities. "Why not?" Kevin countered bravely, taking another step forward towards the threatening figures rather than retreating in fear. "'Cause I'm tired of being alone, tired of everyone else deciding who's worthy and what they deserve. So you tell me," he challenged them directly, "what makes any one of us lesser?" This simple yet profound question hung heavy amidst the air, even for the Hollow Court members accustomed to dominance over lesser species. They paused, momentarily caught off guard by Kevin's unexpected defiance. Thyra watched in silent admiration as Kevin held his ground against such formidable opponents, with only courage and conviction driving him forward, something she had not expected from one so unassuming, yet now finding himself becoming her unlikely protector amidst all odds stacked heavily against them both on this Christmas Eve night. "Step aside," the leader finally commanded after a tense moment. "She will come willingly or by force." Kevin's gaze hardened, but he made no move to retreat. Instead, his eyes softened just slightly when they met Thyra's understanding, and something deeper passing between them in that brief instant before any words needed exchange. Thyra's scales shimmered briefly with an inner glow, as if responding directly to the raw courage now emanating from Kevin. It was a reminder of what had long been lost within her own heart, a spark reignited after centuries buried beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, yet emerging beneath warmth, growing steadily stronger every second under moonlit skies through windows behind where they stood together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside. "I will not," she declared firmly, her voice strong but no longer cold. "If you want me," Thyra faced the Hollow Court member's head on, "you'll have to take me without breaking him first." Kevin's heart thumped heavily in his chest at this declaration. Thyra's refusal and defense of both herself and him resonated deeply within his own soul. A connection stronger than fear or even hope flickered between them, the mutual recognition of shared strength and will despite all odds stacked so heavily against them. The Hollow Court members exchanged looks among themselves, their confidence wavering ever so slightly under this unexpected defiance from both dragonwoman and mortal man combined. Then one stepped forward with a snarl, raising an arm to strike, but Kevin lunged without hesitation at the moment of attack, diving in front of Thyra, as if instinctively knowing she needed protection against whatever lay ahead. Thyra's heart blazed suddenly. A long, dormant flame rekindled fiercely within her chest amidst this unexpected confrontation and sacrifice from Kevin. She caught him mid-fall, their eyes meeting once more with a shared sense now emerging beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow that had defined lives past until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both. "Let us face this together," Thyra whispered back urgently, as Kevin's hand reached out instinctively towards hers amidst the chaos surrounding them. "We must." "Then let it be side by side." Kevin nodded resolutely, in reply, his shared resolve spurring something within him further to life beyond what he might have previously thought possible. The tension crackled electrically between these beings of vastly different natures, yet now united under pressure and uncertainty, facing a daunting future ahead together. Yet amidst all this potential danger still lurking around them, warmth spread steadily throughout both their hearts, despite everything unresolved lingering underneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both. And as night wore on around them, beneath festive lights illuminating city streets, beyond snowy sidewalks, transforming world into something dreamlike out of fairy tales come true, despite everything uncertain about their journey ahead now, under moonlit skies through windows behind where they stood together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing steadily stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. Kevin found himself looking forward rather than dreading another lonely season alone, without connection or meaning in life, until tomorrow dawned once more with something new beginning to emerge beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow that had defined lives past before now. The chapter ends here, as Kevin and Thyra stand together amidst Christmas cheer inside the bustling market. The warmth of candlelight and their shared resolve fills them both despite all uncertainties lingering still unresolved amidst stories hidden by time past until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both now, under moonlit skies through windows behind, where they stood together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. The city of Chicago, under a blanket of snow and twinkling Christmas lights, buzzed with holiday cheer that night as Kevin O'Brien found himself in an unexpected yet deeply meaningful situation alongside Thyra Flame Wing. The cafe where they had first met became a battleground for something much deeper than mere social niceties, a confrontation unlike any either could have anticipated. Tension crackled electrically between them amidst the chaos of the court members, their intentions clear to disrupt the connection that Kevin and Thyra were beginning to form. As one member stepped forward with menacing intent, preparing to strike, it was Kevin who acted first, lunging protectively towards Thyra without hesitation. His instinctive action caught her off guard, but also reignited a long, dormant spark within her heart. "Let us face this together," Thyra whispered back urgently, as she steadied herself from the unexpected movement of protecting Kevin during their fight against the court members, catching his hand, which reached out towards hers for support and connection amidst all uncertainty. Her eyes met his with an unspoken understanding. No words needed to be said in that moment. Kevin nodded resolutely in reply, feeling a strange surge of determination fill him despite being so far removed from any kind of heroic action before now. Their resolve seemed to draw strength from each other's presence amidst the chaos and uncertainty surrounding them. Warmth spread steadily throughout both their hearts, despite everything unresolved lingering underneath layers frozen hard by sorrow, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both. The confrontation came swiftly. Thyra's ancient knowledge of fire, a power she had wielded with unparalleled skill in her youth among the Drakuri, rekindled instantly, as if awoken by Kevin's selfless act, and their shared resolve to protect each other from threats unknown, but certainly not unwelcome given circumstances unfolding around them. "Back off," Thyra snarled, her voice cutting through the air like a razor. Her golden-slit eyes narrowed in warning. No trace of fear or hesitation marred this formidable dragonwoman's stance as she prepared herself for battle to ensure Kevin's safety and uphold their newfound bond amidst these unexpected adversaries seeking nothing more than discord between them. She stepped forward, flames dancing along her crimson, scaled arms, as if they were extensions of the embers within her soul, ready once again after centuries of dormancy. With a swift movement, she unleashed waves of heat that forced back all those who had dared approach with ill intent towards Kevin and herself, those who would have seen their brief connection shattered or even worse. Kevin watched in awe as Thyra's fiery power unfolded before his eyes, a sight both terrifying and mesmerizing simultaneously. The flames swirled around her, a testament to the ancient strength she still held within despite long years of solitude. It was an overwhelming display that made Kevin's heart race, but also filled him with pride for this extraordinary being he had unknowingly brought into his life. "Thyra," he breathed, stepping closer once the immediate threat seemed neutralized. "You're incredible." Her golden eyes met his warmly. Despite their recent ordeal, there was gratitude and affection shining through now more than ever before. She smiled gently at him, a rare sight that sent a shiver down Kevin's spine, yet in the most delightful way possible. "Kevin," she replied softly, but with unmistakable sincerity, "we are together now." With the chaos temporarily abated, and their resolve solidified stronger than anything they might have previously believed capable within themselves, individually let alone as two beings of such vastly different origins, coming together under unusual circumstances like this holiday season. The night grew colder outside, amidst snowy streets, still bustling faintly with festivities, yet, inside cozy little cafe, where they stood side by side facing reality head on, Kevin found himself looking forward rather than dreading another lonely Christmas Eve without connection or meaning in life, until tomorrow dawned once more, bringing something new into perspective beneath layers frozen hard by sorrow that had defined lives past before now. There was hope growing steadily stronger every second inside their cozy little haven, amidst the chaos outside, under moonlit skies, through windows behind where they stood together. The warmth of candlelight and shared resolve filled them both, despite all uncertainties lingering still unresolved amidst stories hidden by time past, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both now, under moonlit skies, through windows behind where they stood together, amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. In the dimly lit, warm glow of Kevin's modest apartment later that night, adorned only with simple lights hanging from the ceiling and along a small tree in one corner, both found themselves reflecting on this extraordinary turn their lives had taken. The air was thick with an unspoken understanding between them, a connection formed not just through words, but actions over shared dangers faced together. Kevin brought out 2 mugs of steaming hot cocoa, something simple yet comforting after the whirlwind they'd experienced earlier. They sat side by side on his small couch, sipping quietly for a moment before Thyra spoke up unexpectedly. "Among my people," she began softly, her voice tinged with ancient wisdom and an emotion Kevin had never seen in someone so strong, a hint of vulnerability now becoming clearer as their story unfolded further into the night. "We choose once, forever." Kevin's heart skipped a beat at those words, so profound yet also daunting given everything that lay ahead for them both. "Thyra," he started hesitantly, setting down his half-empty mug on the coffee table between them with shaking hands due to nerves and sudden rush of emotions overwhelming him right now amidst this unexpected development, taking their lives in directions neither could have anticipated so far into evening after meeting briefly earlier today during Christmas celebrations around city. "Kevin O'Brien, will you be my husband?" she asked directly, without beating around the bush, her eyes piercing his with intensity that made it impossible to look away or miss how earnestly sincere she was being right now, asking him such an enormous commitment despite knowing so little about each other truly until tonight and its events unfolding amidst holidays. Kevin dropped his mug in shock, hot cocoa splattering across the wooden floorboards below where had been sitting moments ago, but somehow couldn't care less given this momentous question hanging between them. "We just met," was all he could manage to say through a mix of disbelief and overwhelming emotion rising within him right now. Thyra smiled gently at his response, her golden eyes shining with an understanding warmth that spoke volumes beyond any need for additional words here tonight, under these circumstances, after everything they'd already been through together so far. "I've waited 800 years, she explained calmly yet firmly, and only felt truly alive again in the past few hours since meeting you." Her honesty cut deep into Kevin's heart. Something about her directness and sincerity resonated profoundly within him despite all uncertainties lingering now amid stories hidden by time past, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both, yet hope growing steadily stronger every second inside cozy little cafe where this momentous decision was being made. The chapter ends here, as Kevin and Thyra stand together amidst Christmas cheer inside the bustling market. The warmth of candlelight and their shared resolve fills them both despite all uncertainties lingering still unresolved amidst stories hidden by time past, until today, when they chose to sit down beside each other, finding connection against all odds stacked so heavily for someone like them both now, under moonlit skies, through windows behind, where they stood together amidst Christmas cheer and winter's chill outside, yet hope growing stronger every second inside cozy little cafe. Kevin sat on his small couch, still reeling from Thyra's unexpected proposal, as she waited patiently beside him. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of Christmas lights blinking in the background, a stark contrast to the whirlwind inside Kevin's head. His heart pounded against his chest, a cacophony of disbelief and hope. "Thyra," he started hesitantly, setting down his half-empty mug on the coffee table with shaking hands. "We just met." She smiled gently at him, her golden eyes shining with an understanding warmth that cut through the haze in Kevin's mind. "I've waited 800 years, she explained calmly yet firmly, and only felt truly alive again in the past few hours since meeting you." Kevin's heart clenched as he processed those words, each syllable a revelation of timeless patience and enduring hope. The weight of her declaration was immense, yet centuries spent alone, all for this singular moment with him. "I don't know what to say," Kevin admitted quietly, his voice barely above the soft chime of Christmas carols playing in the background. Thyra's hand found his, her touch a reminder that despite their vast differences in age and experience, they shared an unexpected connection. "You're here now," she said softly. "That is more than enough for me." The warmth of her words washed over Kevin, soothing some of the doubt swirling inside him. He looked into Thyra's eyes, searching for any sign that this wasn't real, some trick of fate or a misstep in his own logic. But all he saw was sincerity and an unyielding resolve to move forward together. "Okay," he finally said, taking a deep breath. "Let's see what happens next." Thyra nodded, the smallest hint of relief in her expression as she squeezed Kevin's hand reassuringly. They sat like that for several minutes, letting the silence speak volumes between them, a testament to how much had transpired in such little time. Eventually, Thyra broke their momentary stillness with a gentle suggestion. "Perhaps it would be better if we spent some more time getting to know each other properly before making any final decisions." Kevin nodded silently, understanding her reasoning. He knew that his acceptance alone wasn't enough. They needed to build a foundation of trust and mutual respect for the monumental commitment she was asking him to make. The days following their initial meeting passed in a flurry of activities as Kevin slowly unraveled more about Thyra's world, ancient tales woven with myths and legends, shared through quiet evenings filled with laughter and shared meals. She introduced him to her people's customs and traditions, painting vivid pictures of life on Drakkari before the void that had been carved into it by centuries of solitude. Meanwhile, Kevin opened up about his own fears and dreams of missed connections and second chances in a world where he once thought stability meant staying alone. His stories were simple, but rich with emotion. Thyra listened intently, her presence an anchor to reality. Amidst the fantastical details she shared about Drakkari culture. On New Year's Eve, Kevin found himself on his rooftop, watching fireworks light up the sky in a brilliant display of color and sound. The night air was crisp against his skin as he wrapped his arms around Thyra, who stood beside him with her long dark red hair flowing like molten embers under the glittering lights. "Did you ever think this could happen?" Kevin asked softly, looking down at their intertwined hands. Thyra turned to face him, a serene smile playing on her lips. "Hope is not something one should abandon," she replied gently, "especially when it finds its home in another's heart." Kevin gazed into Thyra's eyes, the golden depths reflecting his own mirrored emotions, wonder and fear entangled like strands of fate itself. He stepped forward, pulling her closer until their foreheads touched. "Thank you for waiting," he murmured. "For me." Thyra tilted her head slightly in acknowledgement, then placed a soft kiss on Kevin's cheek before speaking again. "And thank you for never giving up Hoppy no matter how lost it seemed." Kevin took a deep breath and stepped back to look at Thyra fully. "You know," he said slowly, his voice full of sincerity and vulnerability, "for my whole life, I've been told that I wasn't enough, that there was something inherently boring or unremarkable about me." He paused for a moment before continuing, "But when you saw me, just on scene to ask if I would be your husband, I knew there must be something special in me, after all, something worth 800 years of waiting." Thyra's eyes softened, and she reached out to take Kevin's hand again, squeezing it tightly. "Kevin O'Brien," she began earnestly, "will you marry me, not just for tonight or tomorrow, but forever?" This time when he spoke, there was no hesitation in his voice. "Yes," he whispered fervently, looking up at her through a mix of tears and joy shining brightly in his brown eyes behind glasses. Thyra's smile radiated from the core of her being, her entire essence alight with newfound purpose after centuries of waiting. "Then let us make this forever," she declared softly, pulling Kevin into an embrace under Kevin. "Thyra, Thyra, Kevin, Kevin dragonwoman, Thyra, Kevin, Thyra, Thyra, Kevin, Thyra."